I am the poetry editor, one of the poetry editors at Barren magazine. And I'm so excited today to be conducting a mini interview of one of our past contributors. Actually, Prince was in one of the first, I think the first issue I ever worked on. And that was issue 5, The Weight of Days. And ever since then, I have loved following our guest. I already said Prince Bush is here with us today, as you can see. And I'm so excited to ask questions because ever since issue 5, that's when I was exposed to Prince's work. And I have loved following ever since. So when we had the option to interview past contributors, Prince was the first person I wanted to talk to because I have loved watching their trajectory. So let's get started. Prince, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for that introduction. How are you?
I'm good. It's a nice little day. The light is good. The sun's out. I was really nervous it was going to rain, so I'm very happy with that. So where are you located right now?
I am in Bowling Green, Kentucky. I go to Western Kentucky University for my MFA right now.
And so how has that been? Are you in year 1 or 2?
I'm in year 1. It's very interesting. I have to be a teacher's assistant on top of being a student. So it's a little labor intensive, but it's been pretty good to live on my own and kind of figure my own way out because I got my undergrad in my hometown. So it's been good to like get away.
Yeah, that makes, I totally get that. When I went to college, I was like, I don't want to be around here. I just want to go. I just need to get out. I can't. So I moved on. So that's really cool. So what brought you to the MFA? Like how long, I guess, let me go back a little bit. How long have you been writing and how long have you been publishing? Because I know for me at least, there's a difference. Like I feel like I've been writing for a long time, but publication came a lot later in my writing process. So what does that look like for you? And then how did you come upon the MFA as a choice for yourself?
Okay. So I was writing about 10 years before I published, but I was writing as like a kid. So I was writing like in 7th grade, but I was writing poems, but I didn't even know that publication existed until my freshman year of college when I had a professor who said, you should think about editing these for publishing. And we had this workshop. And every time in a workshop, she would say, in order to consider this piece to be published, you should do this. So I was like, what does that mean? And then I asked her about it a little bit more, but I didn't actually send out work until my junior year.
Okay. That's awesome. And then, so I know that, so what was your undergraduate degree then? Because you said you were in workshop. So you were in lots of writing spaces during your undergrad degree, which I'm guessing did it prompt your decision to go into an MFA? Because I know that's something that people often go back and forth.
Sorry, I forgot to answer that question. I majored in English with a minor in women and gender studies. And I went to the Bucknell Seminar for Undergraduate Poets. One of my English professors sent an email to the whole English department about it. And I was like, I love that. I would love to go to a poetry fellowship. And then one of my teachers, also that same teacher, she basically changed the course of my life because she also told me about getting an MFA. I did not know that existed. I learned about that freshman year too.
I love teachers that are pivotal like that. I took one poetry class in college, and it was because I had time and I was interested. And my teacher was Raina Shirali, and it was the first time I ever had a workshop-based anything. And I didn't do really anything after that explicitly, but because of that, I felt much more comfortable with like sharing things with people and being like, I want your thoughts. And so workshop was really important, but also her teaching was really important. And had I not taken that class with her, I don't think I would be where I am doing what I'm doing, reading poems at Barren because of it. So I think I love pivotal people and I love hearing about that teacher. So that was my first question, which was kind of all encompassing. And then, so one of the things that I wanted to ask, because I was thinking, what would I want to be asked about my work. And one of the things that I came up with was, what are some takeaways that you personally want readers to have when they read your stuff? And of course, topics will vary. So one poem might have a focus here that you'd like to take away, but what do you think an overarching theme or feeling that you have in most of your work? Like, what would you want someone to take away when they read your work?
Well, I'm pretty open about what someone would take away. I think for me, what I like about a poem most is that they can be interpretive, kind of like looking at an abstract painting.
Mhm.
I would like, I always think what Carl Phillips said when he said that he like let the words wash over you. I would just say, just spend time with the poem, and whatever you take away, I think is valid. I don't necessarily approach the poems with a goal in mind for the reader. Maybe a goal in mind for myself, but not really the reader. So I think, sorry that I don't really have an answer. I think
Right.
that the takeaway can be anything.
I love that answer because I agree with you. I might have a goal for myself of what I want to get out of it, but what somebody else gets out of it, the day that they read it, the context that they read it, that's all going to change how somebody interprets it. So no, I love that answer. Like concrete, I want you to take away the color yellow every time you read. Like that, that's great. But I agree. It's very much dependent on when you read it, how long you sit with it, where you are. So I love that answer. So another thing that I'm curious about, it's relative to your poem Type of Burns that was in Frontier, and how that started a whole series at Frontier Poetry. So I was curious how that came about. I read it this morning, or I reread it this morning because I wanted to have a fresh like look at it, because I remember when it came out and then when the series started, and so I wanted to re-expose myself to your work this morning. And I was curious how that entire thing came about, from your end, from Frontier's end, and also how that's been for you. I mean, you bookended an entire series that was meant to highlight voices with Black Lives Matter and support, and just it was something that I hadn't seen before, and it was really cool to me to be someone who started and ended that series. So I was curious what your like feelings are and how that all happened for you.
So during these moments of like Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, I felt this immediacy to I had to write something down. I felt voiceless at the same time, but I wanted to write down how I felt right at the moment. I felt devastated, I felt heartbroken, but also in writing it, I feel like no one could hear me. So right after I write it, I would send it out everywhere. Like
Mm-hmm.
I would send out basically what I just wrote down because I just feel like no one can hear my screams right now. So I sent it to Frontier. I sent the poems everywhere. I sent it to places where they probably didn't read it. I sent the poem to New York Times. I was like, can someone hear my Black voice?
Mm-hmm.
I want people to care about what's going on. The news cycle, getting over it in one day is just devastating.
Yeah.
So I was very grateful to be in Frontier Poetry. I was very surprised. I've submitted to them before, and the life of rejection and things like that. But I was very, very excited when they decided to publish it. And then I've been writing pretty, I guess what one would say, political, even though, everything's political.
Yeah.
But I've been writing more explicitly political work. So it was easy for me to have something to end the series too.
Mm-hmm.
Because since all of this stuff with COVID and things really pushing your beliefs really at the forefront
Yeah.
at this moment, all my poems have been about what's going on right now. So they kind of have no choice but to be political because of what's going on.
Yeah. It was a beautiful Type of Burns. I love the piece individually, and again, rereading it this morning was just so great. Read it with my coffee, and I the curation that Frontier did, I think, is really beautiful and powerful. And I appreciate you writing always, and then submitting it out, and it's like using your voice. Um, to express how you're feeling and what's going on. Because you're right, I think everything is political, but given what's going on right now, it's almost impossible to not discuss what's happening. It feels disingenuous to not be discussing what's happening in some fashion. So I really appreciate you and that poem and what it became in Frontier. And I appreciate Frontier for giving you that platform and that voice, and that space. Okay, so I have one more question of my bulleted list that I wanted to bring today. And sorry, two. I lied, two. So we kind of touched on this a little bit just a second ago. But you said that you write and then you submit it out. Is that how it's always been for you? Is that your process? So you write and then it's out in the world, or it's being sent out, or do you like sit on something for a while? How does that look for you, or has it changed over time as you've grown as a writer?
It depends on the poem. So
Okay.
some poems, to me, they come out of my head like Athena, but some of them don't. Some of them, they need a lot of work. Some poems I deal with for months, some poems years. But sometimes I get a poem and it's done when I first write it. So I think it really depends on the poem. I mean, I think for the most part, I will let a poem simmer. Like once I write it down, like the first draft, I just don't look at the first draft at all and just let it breathe for days before I even look at it again. So most of the time I don't send it out immediately. But when it's a moment where I already feel like no one can hear me, sending it out is a way to make someone hear me. So I usually only need someone to hear me desperately when it's something like what's going on with Breonna Taylor and George Floyd.
That makes sense. Okay, so that was the second to last question. The last question that I forgot I had. This is one of my favorite things that you do on Twitter. You often will tweet when you've written a poem and it just says, I wrote a poem, exclamation point. Every time you tweet that, I feel inspired to also write a poem. So what started that trend for you? Like, was it accountability? How did that happen? Because I know I'm inspired literally every time I see it. I'm like, well, Prince wrote a poem. I can write a poem. I can do it. I can do that today.
Thank you. I don't know what made me start writing, just wrote a poem. But I think I am personally, really those tweets or all those exclamation points, that's how I feel when I write a poem. Because every time I write one, my anxiety tells me, am I going to be able to write another one? Is this my final poem? Is this the best I will do? So me saying that is a way of affirming that past self that I did it again. But also I do like how people do enjoy it at the same time. I first did it, and when I first did it, I was just really excited about having written a poem. And now I do it because I know it helps others too. But at first I only did it because it's kind of like telling myself, you did it again. You wrote another poem. It's okay. You
Yeah.
will do another one.
Yeah. I really like that, because you're right. There is that little voice like, is this the last one? Is this the best I'll ever do? And so to constantly be proving yourself wrong in the best way, to be like, haha, you were incorrect. Like you thought incorrectly. I love that. I just love that. And again, every time I see that tweet or a tweet that says I wrote a poem, I get so excited. I'm like, well, I want to write a poem. Like I want to write it in that moment. I don't know what it's going to be, but I feel always inspired by those tweets. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you for a lot of things, for your writing, for your voice, for those tweets, for your Twitter presence, for everything that you do. And I really appreciate you taking the time today to talk to me, answer these couple of questions. Where can we find you online, or what's your like where can people go to find where your work is, or information about you?
Thank you. PrinceBush.net is my website. My Twitter is at PrinceBush_. Those are the only two things I have because I don't want to take up too much time from the reading and writing. So that's how people can reach me. Or you could just Google Prince Bush Poet, and I checked, it will only pop things up about me.
Oh, I love self-Googling. That's fantastic. All right, Prince, thank you so much for your time today. And I am so excited to see what you do moving forward. You're one of my favorite writers. And thank you again
Thank
for,
you.
of course, thank you so much for taking time to speak with me and be on our Barren chat today.
Of course. Bye.